Diddy Combs trial. Big day here today in the Southern District of New York in the federal courthouse out in downtown New York. A verdict has been reached. We've been reporting about it all morning. A verdict has been reached in the case. Sean Combs acquitted of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion for both Cassie Ventura Fine and Jane, but ultimately he has been convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution, the Mann Act violations. And today is, you would think that would be the end of the day. It is certainly not. Why? The judge has to determine whether or not Sean Combs should make bail, whether or not he should be released, whether or not, and we have a live shot of the courthouse, whether or not we will see him walk out of that courthouse later today. Right now, both sides are submitting paperwork to the court. We're keeping a very careful eye on the courtroom updates to see what that decision will be, because the judge is going to decide. And what the basis was for Sean Combs to be locked up during the whole course of this criminal process, it is very different now. It is very different now because he's not facing those top charges, those violent charges, those charges that could have sent him to prison for the rest of his life. And one of the other big considerations we have when we talk about transportation to engage in prostitution, the charges that he was convicted of, is what will be his sentence. While there are maximums of 10 years in prison on each charge, and although the prosecution has said that he could face up to 20 years if they stack them one after the other, it seems highly unlikely given a number of mitigating factors in this case, but there's also aggravating factors, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But we're going to take your questions as we are live on air, and we update you about what is happening. But I also have with us a very special series of guests. So we have an all-star panel. We got with us Ben Chew, acclaimed litigator, famously represented Johnny Depp in his high-profile trial against Amber Heard. We also have with us criminal defense attorney and civil rights attorney Tyler Bailey. We have with us Sierra Gillespie and Elizabeth Milner out in the field. We'll get to them. But right now, we are also joined by Sheree Hayes. Now, for anybody who's been following this case, you will know who Mr. Hayes is, also referred to as the Punisher during the course of this case. Mr. Hayes, who's also, by the way, the author of In Search of Freezer Meat, we can talk more about that. Hayes had testified during the course of this trial about his involvement in 8 to 12 sexual encounters that he had with Cassie Ventura Fine and Sean Combs. Testified that Combs watched and gave directions during these events. You played a pivotal role in this case, Mr. Hayes. It's great to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Your reaction to the verdict?
I honestly thought the verdict was the correct decision. It may be not based on following the specifics of the law, because I know the prosecutor said you only had to find one instance where you believe there's coercion. But if you're talking about a jury and the understanding that this was relationships, these were his partners, these were, they were exchanged text messages of love and care and over long periods of time. And then also a bunch of consenting also messages to the sexual activity and the type of lifestyle they lived. I thought it was going to be hard for a typical person that wasn't going to really streamline the law, extremely hypervigilant, to not see this as a relationship domestic issue opposed to sex trafficking. So this is actually what I expected.
To be clear, in any of your encounters, did you see any force, fraud, coercion being used to induce Cassie to engage in these sex acts?
Yeah, it's similar to my testimony. I did not. And so what I will even add is, I testified in the facts where I only interacted and spoke to Cassie during any of these occasions. I never had any communication with Mr. Combs. So I would be greeted in a personable one-on-one situation prior to the activities, and then again at the conclusion. And I always found good vibes, good energies. Hey, thanks for coming. It was great. We'll see you again. Here you go. And I did not even witness anything that appeared to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs or anything. So I did find it difficult to see my interaction being anything close to criminal.
I want to tell you what's happening outside the courthouse. CNN is reporting that people are quite excited. There are people who are gathered. They are spraying baby oil into the crowd. There are remnants of oil that could be seen on the courthouse pavement. We were reporting earlier on today that there was a verbal dispute between supporters of Sean Combs, or at least supporters of his case, and those who feel differently. When you're seeing a reaction like that outside of the courthouse, you playing a role in this case, what's your position on it? What is your view on it?
So what I think is I think there's a benefit of the misinformation. You know, me as a civilian, even before I was involved, before I became a witness, the social understanding of this case, they made it so much bigger than what it was. You had rumors of child trafficking. You had all of this bribery and celebrities involved, and all of this crazy stuff that escalated to this belief that you was going to get this magnitude of just terrible acts, and not downplaying the domestic violence part of it. But I think when the actual facts of the case became evident, I think people's expectation and their belief that it was going to be so much more, it actually minimized the victims' experiences. So now, where there are still people that are victimized, regardless of the verdict, there's still bad experiences. People almost see it as a celebratory, simple scenario, because everybody thought it was going to be so much worse than what it was, including myself,
Do you think
listening to the banter.
Do you think that your testimony helped secure the conviction for transportation to engage in prostitution? Because let's be clear, the two charges that he was convicted of, one was with respect to Cassie, and the other was with respect to Jane. Do you think your testimony helped secure the conviction against Sean Combs?
No, not at all. Not my testimony, because I was clear that my dealings with them was, I'm from New York City at the time, and I only dealt with them in a New York City area. And me being hired in the initial communications was as a male dancer. We always show up on our own. But I did hear in the testimony there was evidence of plane tickets and stuff being purchased on his American Express card for some of the other escorts. So I'm assuming that secured the conviction for those charges.
So as I mentioned to you before we were coming on, we have amazing viewers who submit incredible questions. And I have a bunch of them. That a lot of people have questions for you, Mr. Hayes. So let's get right into it. All right, first question. We got a question from Jackie Reed. Did you have any direct dealings with Christina Coram or any other person other than Diddy that helped set up his freak-offs?
Actually, no. And actually, I didn't have any direct dealings with Diddy. All of my communications were specifically with Miss Ventura and Miss Ventura only. There was no conversation, no communication, no anything with Mr. Combs. And I said this before. The first time I actually even had eye contact him, for the first time, eye contact was at leaving the stand after my testimony. I had zero interactions with Mr. Combs.
And by the way, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not like tweaking these questions. These are the ones that are coming in, so I'm just going to read them to you. This is from an account, Smarty Pants. Thank you so much for the super chat question. Do you think Diddy was cheap with you?
Well, listen, if I'm being honest, when I hear some of the other guys getting $5,000, $6,000, obviously that would be the first thing you think. But then I don't know the scenario. I was never there more than 4 hours at a time on the average. And one thing that I will say is I came multiple days in a row. So I don't know what the criteria was to determine what my fee would be, but I was fine with it. I don't have any reservations as if I was not fairly compensated,
We've got a question. Where is this? Okay. Show and Tell Knitting asks, how will the results of this trial affect your interactions with clients like Diddy? Will you do anything differently in the future?
As far as I'm concerned, I would not do anything differently. That was a nuanced situation for me. Obviously, I'm a male dancer. My trade on a regular basis is not sex work to that degree. That was a proposition I indulged in. So I don't really see much changing. This was a very nuanced situation. I don't think anybody predicted these scenarios escalating to what it actually became. So I don't have any full regrets of my interactions, or if I'm being honest, even my decision. It was something I was a part of. It were some of our decisions, and I'm comfortable with the way everything transpired, even the negatives.
Chris Bono asks, how has this experience changed you, if at all?
Well, it put me in a scenario where I have to do damage control, right? We live in a society where you meet a person, everybody Googles you, right? So I know for the rest of my life, I'm associated with this crime and or trial, I should say, with this trial and these accusations, and I'm instrumental in it too. So all I'm doing now is I have to have a much conscious effort and how I'm perceived in my interactions with people going forward, because I could start out in a lot of situations in a negative opposed to what normal people do.
And I appreciate you coming on and speaking to media outlets about this, because obviously the trial wasn't testified. There was reporting, it wasn't televised, excuse me, but it wasn't, there was reporting about what the testimony was like. People might have misconceptions about what you said, why you testified. So to be able to clear the air is really important, which is why we get a question from Brooklyn Truth. What was your motivation for testifying? So to be clear, I mean, did you want to testify? Did you reach out to the government? How did that work exactly?
So I did not want to testify. The government contacted me even way before the charges, just investigators. And I actually believed that my testimony was going to be insignificant. You know, I explained to them I didn't see any violence. You know, I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. And then I was aware I was a resident of New York. We met up in New York, so it didn't really, in my opinion, or my understanding, constitute sex trafficking. So the thing that put me in this situation, and this never happened, I didn't get any issues from the prosecution or the federal government. But if you talk to people who supposed to be in the know, they scare you about the Southern District. They give you this thing where, look, you want to cooperate, just do whatever you got to do. You don't want to get on their bad side. So I went into the scenario like, look, I'm just going to cooperate to the best of my ability, because I don't want to create a scenario where I'm looked at as an issue and then it escalates to something. It probably wouldn't have, but I just kept getting negative feedback that the Southern District is people you don't want to mess around with. And if they want to talk to you, if they want facts, if they want information, you have to give it to them. And that escalated to me on the stand, where I never second guessed even, cooperating, because I did have worry that resistance could have been an issue for me.
Got maybe the most important question of the day from Xenu Golf Club. Did you like your courtroom sketches?
So I'm still getting problems from my buddies about how terrible those sketches are. So I did not like the courtroom sketches, man.
Well, Combs didn't like him either. He thought he looked like a koala. So.
Yeah. They have me. They're calling me like I don't know if you're familiar with the Fantastic Four, but I'm Ben Grimm. You know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yeah, a lot of jokes, a lot of unnecessary jokes I'm subjected to because of those photos.
Got a question coming in from, wait, I just lost it. Where was it? Wait. I think no. Oh yeah. Chris Buono asks, if you weren't an escort worker, in what line of business could you see yourself?
Ironically, I have a passion for car sales. I could see myself being in a decent dealership, maybe a Mercedes, BMW dealership. I like the interaction with people. That would have been somewhere I would have went into as a secondary option.
Let me ask you a question. When you were testifying, this is my question. When you were testifying, what was it like to be in the room with Sean Combs, to see him? Did you make eye contact with him? Was he looking at you? Did it feel awkward? Was it strange?
Listen, man, it was the actual extreme of all of those feelings. I think the federal court is set up to intimidate you. The magnitude of the room, it's like the doors are 15 feet high, the ceiling's 30 feet high, the furniture's huge, you're sitting up high, the judge is high, it's freezing in the room. I walked in and I had literally an anxiety attack. And I consider myself a very calm, cool, collected guy, not easily rattled at all. And by the time I got on the witness stand, I was trembling. And so then to put on top of the understanding that I'm walking in there as the prosecution's witness, so I'm going to assume there's not a favorable thought process with Mr. Combs, his family, anybody involved. So it was very nerve-wracking, man. And I only benefited because I got called to the stand 10 minutes before lunch. And literally just swearing in and answering my name and very preliminary questions, I was losing my voice. I was having trouble talking. And so I'm happy that it broke for lunch. And it took me 20 or the 30-minute lunch to recompose myself. Or I might have had a very different testimony if I didn't have that break time to just kind of get myself together, because it was overwhelming.
Let me, Sheree, stand by. We have more questions coming in, but I want to bring on the other panelists as well. Ben, we haven't had a chance to talk about the verdict. This is something you predicted, though.
Well, I don't know. I went back and forth, but it was, I have to confess, it was a bit of a surprise to me.
Was it something about Cassie's testimony? Was it something about Jane's testimony with respect to sex trafficking? Again, the jury did not believe the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that they were victims of sex trafficking. What was it? What was the thing that you might have been a hang-up?
I thought it was some of the communications, the text messages, which really suggested more of a relationship rather than coercion. That this is, I think it came across as a very, very complicated, unusual relationship, but a relationship.
Yeah. We got super chat questions coming in for you, Ben. So this is from Nancy Nicole. Actually, this is a regular question. Then we'll go to, actually, let me start with a super chat question. Super chat question from JAM. Thank you so much, Ben. Can law address the need for cognitive consent that has often comprised sex crimes when, I'm not sure what this means, when something's normalized? But yeah, can the law address the need for cognitive consent that is often compromised in sex crimes? I'm not exactly sure the question, but I throw it to you.
No, it's a very good question. And I don't think really this is something that the law can really define. And that's why I think the jury system is really the best way of obtaining the truth when you're talking about complex human emotions. It's really hard to have bright lines in the law. I think it's something that a jury has to consider. And I think this really is the best way to adjudicate these things.
Tyler, Nikki Vale says, do you think if Christina Coram, this is a super chat question, thank you so much. Do you think if Christina Coram testified, the jury would have reached a different verdict?
I think that if she testified as a part of conspiracy, it may have helped the jury get to a conclusion more likely to convict on count number one. But I think as a whole that this jury probably wrestled with the fact that they did not believe this was a conspiracy, a one-man conspiracy with Mr. Combs at the top, and there being no co-conspirators, and then all of the acts and furtherance of this conspiracy led to prostitution, sex trafficking with the two victims. I think they really wrestled and not feel like it was enough. But with KK testifying, possibly it could have helped the prosecution out a little more in convincing the jury.
Ben, got a super chat question from Christina Lester. She writes, I have to know this. Please ask Ben. Is he related to Benjamin Chew, prominent Pennsylvania lawyer and jurist and a close friend of George Washington, 1722 to 1810? The people must know.
You have a wonderful viewership and someone who is very keen on history. Yes, that is my ancestor, who was the last Crown-appointed Chief Judge of Pennsylvania. And anybody who is a history buff like your viewer can go see the museum that's in Germantown called Cliveden. And that was Benjamin Chew's house, and it was the site of the Battle of Germantown.
That is awesome. That is amazing. And you had no choice but to become a lawyer. You couldn't be in sales like Mr. Hayes. You couldn't do it. Nope, you couldn't be in that. Nope, you had to be a lawyer. I completely understand. Okay, let me go. Let me go to you, Tyler, on this. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Super chat question. Is it curious how a deadlocked jury yesterday could come to a unanimous decision with only the hour the next day? I mean, that is interesting, right? They were deadlocked at the end of the day. They basically said they couldn't, they're unpersuadable, right? Unpersuadable views on both sides. They come back in an hour and find him not guilty of racketeering. Can you explain that?
It's amazing what a good night's sleep could do. They clearly not reached that verdict yesterday. They went home. They were told not to discuss this matter, but they slept on it, and they probably were fresh-eyed and ready to go that morning. And I'm pretty sure the foreman said, okay, y'all, we slept on it. Where are we at? And they quickly got to a verdict today.